Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar to launch Agixa to the rice industry. There's still a number of people still joining us, but we'll get things underway. I guess as you've been reading on the screen, Rinskor Active is a key component of both Agixa and Ubeniq. It's got extremely strong credentials from a sustainability and environmental profile. It's been globally recognised, so we're really excited to be able to bring these two new herbicides to the Australian rice industry. So we'll get the we'll get the webinar underway, but just a couple of housekeeping components. This webinar has been recorded, so we'll be able to provide you a copy of this once the session is concluded, and we'll email it out later in the day. We've just muted everyone's microphones just to ensure that there's no background noise, so that the presenters come through nice and clear for you. We're going to have a Q&A session later in the webinar. Please utilise the Q&A function to type in your questions, and we will answer those questions towards the end of the session. Okay, so my name's Andrew Costa. I'm hosting the webinar today, so throughout the course of today we'll have presentations from Dan Dixon, who's the Marketing Director. He'll introduce the Rinskor Active presentation, give you some background on Rinskor Active. Greg Wells, who from our R&D division, will take you through a lot of the technical data on Agixa and Ubeniq, and Connie Moore will take you through some the commercial experience that we've had over the last few years in the development of both Agixa and Ubeniq. Really appreciate your time today. As we prepare for the coming rice season, understand there's plenty going on in the field for agronomists and consultants out there, and a big welcome to you all. I mean, obviously there's plenty from the Riverina, but also many from Northern Australia as well that have taken the time to join us. So there's a number of rice industry events later this week and next week, and we really felt that with an improved outlook for rice this coming season, that it was important that we give you a refresh on Ubeniq, and launch you Agixa, so you got the latest information on both those products. So enjoy the presentation. I'll now hand over to Dan Dixon, who will take us through the introduction on Rinskor. Okay, Dan, over to you.
Thanks, Andrew. Can everyone hear me okay? Or can you hear me okay, Andrew?
Yep, gotcha.
Let's try and... That slide's not progressing, Andrew. If you just, maybe you can step forward.
Does it come through now?
Not yet. Yep. Okay. Thank you. So yes, thank you everybody for joining today. Appreciate your time. As Andrew said, this new active is an exciting new launch for us globally, and here in Australia, you are one of the first countries to see it in commercial use, and you have been the first people in the world to see it in demonstration trials over the last couple of years. It's a new active ingredient. It's a post-emergent herbicide for the control of economically important grasses, broadleaves, and sedge weeds. So it will do all three types of weeds, including those that are resistant to other chemistry groups. And being a group I chemistry, it will control weeds that are resistant to those other classes that are listed there. It's an alternative mode of action to be used in rice, particularly for some weeds where they haven't been used group I for grass control or sedge control. very low active ingredient use rates. So we're talking grams per hectare. Most of the use rates of the Rinskor products are in the tens of grams, so 20 to 45 grams per hectare of active being applied to the environment, as opposed to many other rice herbicides that are in the kilos of active per hectare. It's very selective to both Japonica and Indica rice types and applied at the recommended rates and use patterns, and Greg Wells will go through that later in the presentation. One of the key benefits is its rapid degradation in soil and tolerant plant tissues, so it doesn't persist in the environment. So it does a very good job of controlling the weeds, and then it degrades very quickly in the environment, soil, plant tissue, and water. So there's no carryover issues. Very favourable environmental fate and a very broad compatibility. Go to the next slide, please, Andrew. It's a systemic herbicide, so it mostly absorbed through the foliage, but it can also be taken up through the roots of plants in those first hours of application. It's translocated through the phloem and xylem and then accumulates in the meristematic tissues where it exerts its herbicidal action. So we have some photos later on showing what the symptoms look like and where it's accumulating. As I said, it's a group I herbicide. It's a unique synthetic auxin herbicide. It's from the arylpicolinate subgroup of group I chemistry. It's the same subgroup of chemistry as Arylix, which you know as in Paradigm and Rexaid and other products. So it's the second active that's in that subgroup. It's got some novel characteristics compared to the other group I herbicides, mostly around use rate, grams per hectare, and a novel spectrum. The weeds look different as they're dying to other group I chemistries, and a very favourable environmental fate. We've spoken that the product represents an alternative mode of action for utility in rice. We will look at expanding the label into other crops and other segments. There'll be more on that later in the year. And it's has a unique molecular interaction with auxin receptors compared to other auxin herbicides. So there has been some scientific work done by universities to show that even though this is a group I auxin chemistry, it will control other group I resistant weeds. So it does have a unique binding site, unique receptor sites. Next slide, please, Andrew. The two products we're talking about today in rice, Ubeniq, we launched 2 years ago in what we thought was the smallest rice planting in history, and then we had an even smaller one last year. So we will cover off on Ubeniq again at the end of this presentation to just give you a quick update on where Ubeniq fits. It's a straight Rinskor active product. It's an SC formulation, and its use is by squirt or Bickley boom directly into rice bays and floodwater. Today we'll spend most time on Agixa, which is a in-can mixture of Cyhalophop and Rinskor. It's an EC formulation, and it's a post-emergent foliar spray for rice. And next one, please, Andrew. And again, please. So on Agixa itself, we are replacing Barnstorm in the market with Agixa. So Barnstorm was straight Cyhalophop. Agixa is Cyhalophop plus Rinskor. You get improved grass activity across all the key grass species from both actives. The Rinskor brings broadleaf weed control. It needs to be applied as a foliar spray post-emergent, so when the weeds have emerged and you have to hit those weeds for activity. And you must use this in a program approach, following a strong foundation herbicide to get the best results. Most of the trial work we have done has been either in a program, which is what we're recommending, and you'll see the results are spectacular, when trying to tease out a lot of the data, we did some work without a foundation to show how strong the herbicide was by itself, but we are always going to advocate that you use a strong foundation program. You can use Agixa in drill sown, delayed permanent water, or aerial seeded rice. So a quick snapshot of the label. So the I think through signing up, you would have been sent a link to our product page on the website, and you'll be able to download the label for both Agixa, Ubeniq, and a Q&A, which hopefully answers some of your questions. But a quick snap of the label, you can see that we're controlling most of the major grass weeds: barnyard grass, silvertop, cooler grass, and sweet panic, plus bringing some major broadleaf weeds for this product: arrowhead, starfruit, water plantain. Greg will go through the performance a little later on the weeds, but they're the ones that are on the label as of today. You must use an adjuvant. Both Cyhalofop and Rinskor are reliant on an adjuvant package to get the product into the weed to be able to do its herbicidal activity. There's one use rate of 2 litres a hectare of Agixa, and that should be mixed with 1 to 2 litres a hectare of an adjuvant, preferably uptake spraying oil, or Hasten, or Loveland MSO are on the label. And just some symptomology. So on the left-hand side of your screen is an untreated plot. On the right-hand side is a Rinskor active plot. Barnyard grass growing in a lab experiment or greenhouse experiment. If you just go to the next slide, please, Andrew. And then over time, you'll see that the nodes will begin to swell. The barnyard grass doesn't change colour too much initially. Go again. By day 3 or day 2, you're starting to get the nutrients being blocked as that meristematic tissue swells. Weed starts to starve. And then you'll see some strange looking symptoms. So right at the base of the plant, you'll see it starting to display that sort of hormone auxin type symptomology. So the above parts of the plant may still be green, but it's working very strongly at stopping that weed from taking any nutrients, any energy out of the crop. Let me go to the next slide. What that looks like in the field. So this is from an Agixa demo conducted in New South Wales last year. You can see in his hand, the barnyard grass is still green. But if you sweep your hand through the rice bay, the weeds pull away very easily because they've that meristematic death right at the growing point at the water surface. So it's slightly different symptoms to what you would expect from say a Group A herbicide, where the barnyard grass will die off over a period of time, whereas this will look different in the paddock. But if you sweep your hand through that bay, you should be able to see the number of barnyard grass just pull away in your hand. Go again, please, Andrew. I'll hand over to Greg Wells. Just a reminder, if you have any questions as we go through, to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Over to you, Greg.
Thanks, Dan. Can you hear me, Andrew?
Yep, no problems at all, Greg.
Right. I'm happy for you to continue to advance the slides too, if you like. Thank you all for joining today. As Dan and Andrew have both said, my name's Greg Wells and I work in research with Corteva and have done so either with Corteva or heritage organisation for nearly 35 years now. Some of that time's been spent in rice, but still learning lots about rice as the years go by. At the outset of this, I just wanted to take a couple of minutes or a minute or so to acknowledge some people that have been very important in the launch of these two products, or the relaunch of Ubeniq and the launch of Agixa. Malcolm Taylor, that's on the line, and his agro appraisals team who have done a lot, or have done the vast majority of the work for the registration trials for both products. Sunrise and Rice Extension for conduct of field demonstrations of Agyxor in the last couple of years. And Carissa Rickson and Trap Services for the trials that have been done in North Queensland this last 2 or 3 years for Agyxor use up there as well. Together, I think all of the rice industry has done a lot to help register, firstly, a Group I treatment for application into floodwater, which has not happened before. And then secondly, and more recently, a Group I treatment together with Cyhalofop in Agyxor for post-emergence foliar control of barnyard grass. So we've not had a Group I for barnyard grass control before. And the point I'd like to make right at the outset, if you don't remember anything else, is that if these are used wisely, I think they should service the rice industry for a very long time. Next slide, Andrew. So the information for the next about 10 to 15 minutes is going to be shown in lots of cases in box plots. And just to explain those, there's generally going to be a letter at the top which will indicate the statistical significance comparing to other treatments. There will be a box and whiskers, which is showing the range of the results of the trial work that's been done for that particular treatment. And that's divided into quartiles. So the whiskers are the bottom 25 and the top 25% of the range of results. And then the box in the middle is the 25 to 50 and 50 to 75. In some cases, there is an N number at the bottom, and that represents the number of replicates of data. And then as we go around, the median, which is sometimes more useful than the mean, is represented by the waste in these particular graphs, and then the average is represented by a dot. Some graphs have red dots on them as well, and that represents the observations from the replicates of data. Next, Andrew. And so as we go through this section, what I'm going to show is some crop safety, rice safety information, and then some weed control information, and then some general labelling information about mixing compatibility, application, and so on. So the first couple of sections are quite a bit of trial data. And this first slide is from a trial at Rice Research up at Jerilderie, where a trial was conducted with 2 varieties of rice to look at the safety of Agyxor applied either at 2 or 3 leaf stage, and then at twice the label rate as well. So as we go from left to right in terms of the treatments, this is percent injury 2 weeks after treatment, comparing to untreated or a known standard in Barnstorm. So Barnstorm is in the maroon bars at label rate and two times label rate. And then going from left to right, we have untreated Agyxor at the label rate, 2 litres at the 2-leaf rice stage, Agyxor at the 3-leaf rice stage in the 3rd bar, Barnstorm at 3-leaf rice stage, and then double rates of 4 litres Agyxor at 2-leaf rice stage, 4 litres at 3-leaf rice stage, and Barnstorm at 3 litres. The 2 points out of this slide are, firstly, that application at 2-leaf rice stage is much more damaging than applying at the label stage. We had thought initially that we may be able to apply earlier, but this work and some other work from the Asia Pacific has shown that we need to be very careful about applying too early with Rinskor to 2-leaf rice. The second thing is that the 2-litre and 4-litre Agyxor compare very nicely to Barnstorm, which we have known for a long time is very selective to rice and has a very nice selectivity profile. So that's good information to give us confidence that on a variety like Ubeniq, we can safely apply Barnstorm. And double overlap, although it's unlikely to happen nowadays with computer sprayers and GPS tracking and so on, is unlikely to be an issue given that 4 litres per hectare is very safe as well. Next, Andrew. So this is that same trial just showing yield, and the treatments are all the same. This time it's about 150 days after the treatments were applied, or the first treatment was applied, and comparing yield with both untreated in the green and Barnstorm in the maroon bars. You can see at the 2-leaf stage there's a numeric depression, although none of these are statistically different. There's a bit of a depression with 2 litres of Agyxor. Barnstorm is basically the same as untreated, and then when you go to the 4 4 litre treatments, third, second and far right-hand side, they're the same as the untreated or barnstorm. So that gives us good confidence that yield will be unaffected as well. Next, Andrew. So that was weed-free. That trial at Jerilderie was done under weed-free conditions. This is now looking at what happens to yield in scenarios where we do treatment programs or sequences of treatments in weedy situations. So this was a trial that Connie and various other folk worked on at Collyamberley in New South Wales a couple of years ago in 2018. And we've taken selected treatments. So going from left to right, the first one, number 2, is Magister plus gramoxone at sowing. The third one in red is the standard foundation treatment, Magister, gramoxone and Stomp at sowing. Treatment number 6 is post-emergence Agyxor at 2 litres, so that's the only treatment that was applied in those plots. Treatment number 7 is the foundation followed by Agyxor, which is the one that we would present or promote to the industry. And then treatment number 10 is in cases where people may not be able to use gramoxone at that post-flush pre-emergence timing, then this gives good confidence that Magister, Stomp followed by Agyxor post-emergence can also do good weed control and yield well. The 2 messages out of this is that, first of all, the foundations are essential and they do impact on weeds, but the sequences are really, really good. So treatments 6, 7 and 10 are really, really nice in terms of weed control, but in this case showing yield. And so we would say always use Agyxor following a foundation treatment. Thanks, Andrew. So that's a little bit about yield. Now looking at weed control, and I focus primarily on barnyard grass for Agyxor because that's the one that's of most interest to us. So initially back in 2017, we did some work looking at rate selection. What rate would we need? And this is a summary of 2 trials that Malcolm did, and it looks at barnstorm at a rate of 1.1 litres, which is the rate of cyhalofop that's applied in the second treatment, Agyxor at 2 litres per hectare, and comparing to a strong standard in Aura at its label rate. And what it shows is a couple of things. First of all, that Agyxor is much stronger than the corresponding rate of barnstorm. So that says that the addition of the Rinskor active has really helped strengthen the barnyard grass control. The second thing that it shows is that Agyxor is very strong, just as Aura is on barnyard grass. So that gives us good comfort that we will have a strong treatment when we use the 2 litre per hectare rate. The other thing about this graph, which I have not shown, is that in these trials, these 2 trials, silvertop grass and cooler grass were also present, and they were 10 out of 10 for all those treatments. So while I focused on barnyard grass, silvertop and cooler grass were completely controlled as well. So that's very good. Next, Andrew. Okay, so that was, the last was looking at rates for barnyard grass. Now this is a graph that tries to summarise 9 trials, which many of you on the phone have helped with. And what it's looking at is sequences. So it's highlighting the value of doing Agyxor in sequence after a strong foundation. So to explain, this is percent control, the final or the highest level of control that was achieved in these 9 trials for various treatments. And so going from left to right, it's the foundation, which is Stomp, Magister, gramoxone, and it's a bit variable, but about 7 out of 10 across those 9 trials. Then the next one is that foundation followed by barnstorm at 1.5 litres post-emergence, and it's very nice. So it shows you that the sequences are good. Then we have the 3 post-emergence treatments applied on their own. Barnstorm at 1.5 litres per hectare, Aura at 375, and it's a bit stronger. And then Agyxor at 2 litres per hectare, and it's about the same or slightly stronger and more a tighter box plot than perhaps Aura is. The thing to note, though, is that on the right-hand side, there isn't really a box plot there, and that's because the foundation, the 3-way foundation in red, followed by Agyxor at 2 litres per hectare, is 10 out of 10. And that's why we're promoting and suggesting to people, please always use it in a sequence, because it's very, very strong and you'll maximise yield potential and weed control if you do that sequence. Okay, so that's it for data. Then we'll move on to some general label comments. Andrew, if you can keep going. So this is just some pictures of what Agixa looks like. I was thinking this week, it's a beer-coloured emulsifiable concentrate. It mixes readily in water without agitation, as you can see in the middle picture. And then with any sort of agitation at all, it makes a nice milky emulsion. The recommendations for tank mixing are pretty standard. Quarter fill, add the herbicide. Half fill, add the oil, whatever oil you choose, e.g. uptake or others, and then completely fill the spray tank. It's very nice and emulsifies very, very well. Next. Okay, so this is a little bit more information based on trial work, and I would say at the outset of this slide that this is research trial results which I'm trying to share, and not all of these are on the label. The other thing that we're saying at this point in time is that Corteva will just support what's on the label, and presently there is a list of the adjuvants there. We will endeavour to update the label as fast as we can. This is really us trying to share some information based on the last 2 or 3 years of trial work. And so we've tried to list physical, biological and incompatible as different categories, and physical means that the treatment will mix readily with Agixa, is safe to the rice, but it may result in some grass control reduction when compared to Agixa on its own under ideal spraying conditions. So, and then biological is where the treatments mix nicely, they're safe to the rice and there's no impact on grass control. And incompatible means that the treatments mix with Agixa, but either are unsafe to the rice or reduce the grass control or both. And so going from the top to the bottom, we've found that Transform and Londax are both physically compatible, but there's a little bit of an impact on grass control, and that's barnyard grass I'm referring to. There's quite a list of biologically compatible things, which we'll update on the label in due course. Lawsban's fine. Star Ain for the northern folk that are on the line, and Stomp are both compatible. And the adjuvants that are already listed on the label, Uptake, Hasten and MSO, are readily compatible. Things that we've found that are incompatible are Fastac and Bazagran M60, and in particular Bazagran M60 has done significant injury to rice and has also impacted dramatically on barnyard grass control. So would recommend to steer clear of those. Next. In terms of application, it's for post-emergent, Agixa's for post-emergent use only from 3-leaf stage through to panicle initiation, although we would recommend applying early in the crop life, as generally the weeds are about the same stage. For aerial application, 40 to 80 litres per hectare, with 40 litres recommended when the rice canopy is open and very light. And for ground application, higher volumes of 80 to 100 litres per hectare, and always applying coarse or larger spray quality to minimise drift potential. Next. Okay. There's just a point about this. I guess people will wonder why there are buffer zones. This is not specific to Agixa or Ubeniq, but as new treatments come to market in various business areas or marketplaces, they will need to have buffer zones, downwind, no spray zones on the label. So it's not specific to Agixa in this case. This is just what we needed to do to register for both ground and aerial application. And so the thing to note here is that the buffer zones for a boom height of 1 metre or lower are very user-friendly, and for aquatic areas and vegetation, sensitive vegetation areas, they're 20 and 140 metres respectively, and all the other buffer zones are 0. So for ground application, that's a very user-friendly downwind no spray zone. The next slide is aerial application, and it refers to both planes and helicopters, and the same categories apply for bystanders, aquatic areas, pollinators, vegetation and livestock. This time they're longer due to the nature of the application, and for aircraft, fixed-wing aircraft, I should say, aeroplanes, it's 80 metres for aquatics and 600 for vegetation areas. and then also a small buffer zone for livestock areas, and helicopters at 60 metres for aquatics and 300 metres for vegetation, and again 15 for livestock. So that's actually a good thing for the industry, because it shows some downwind buffer zones where in some cases treatments that are presently used in the marketplace don't have those, and the applicators are defaulting to what has been tried and tested over the years of a default of, for example, 5 kilometre buffer zones, because there is nothing specified on the label. Agixa and Ubeniq both give downwind buffer zones, and so people can refer to those as they need to. The next one is in relation to water management, and water management for both Agixa and Ubeniq is critical. In the case of Agixa, we would say, a lot like we used to for barnstorm, that there should be about 3/4 of the foliage exposed, because it does rely on contact for activity. We're presently saying don't treat the weeds if they're under moisture stress, as you may get reduced control, and then start reflooding as soon as possible after you've treated, preferably no more than a couple of hours after application to avoid moisture stress. The good thing about Agixa is that it's very rainfast. It's readily rainfast in an hour and probably practically in less. So as soon as treatment is conducted, then irrigation can be restarted. The other thing about water management too, in terms of after treatment is completed, the water needs to be kept for a week and not drained into regional drains or farm dams that might be used for irrigation or other things like that, to avoid residues onto sensitive crops. Okay, just a couple more slides. The next one's about plant back, and it's clearly laid out on the label. For the label rate of 2 litres per hectare, the plant back times are 3 or 6 months. Remembering that cereals, winter cereals, are sensitive because of potentially because of Cyhalophop residues, although it's a short plant back time, and that legumes are also particularly sensitive to Rinskor active that's in Agixa, and so it's a 6-month plant back time for all the grain or pasture legumes. Both time and moisture are critical for these plant back times to be fulfilled, and that's because both actives are broken down by microbial activity in the soil, and that's highest when there's warm, moist soil conditions. So 200 mils of rain or irrigation is suggested, and the time as well. So it's a combination of time and moisture that's needed. And then the last slide from me at this point is in regards to best use of Agixa. We would say that it's a combination of 2 actives, which makes it stronger on key weeds like barnyard grass. But best results are clearly achieved when it's used as part of a program. We would not support it being used as a standalone treatment, as it does not work. 8 out of 10 in moderate to heavy barnyard grass pressure is going to be a mess at the end of the year, and will result in heavy seed set, which will quickly lead to resistance. Always use it in a program. Apply Agixa under excellent growing conditions, and preferably when the weeds have a good moisture, as in floodwater in the field or excellent moisture. Only treat seedlings. Malcolm and I did trials 8 years ago which showed that Rinskor and barnstorm do not work strongly on bigger weeds, and so we would say only treat seedlings as per the label, and only use it post-emergence. It does not work applied into floodwater, so if anyone's thinking of that on the phone, please don't do that, it will fail. And thank you for listening, and I'd like to hand over to Connie now, who's going to go through some practical commercial experience in regards to use of Agixa.
Thanks, Greg. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, fine, Connie.
That's great. Yeah, so over the last several seasons, in conjunction with rice extension, Malcolm Taylor, as Greg mentioned before, and some really good farmers who are able to provide us some rice in which to put these products out on, we're able to get some sort of commercial demonstrations and in-field sort of trial plots up and running, so we could get yourselves as consultants and agronomists along, and industry as well as farmers along to see product Agixa prior to being commercially available. So you had the confidence moving forward in this first season, where there's going to be some good hectares of rice, to recommend it and being confident that you're going to get some good results from it. Next one, thanks, Cos. So up in the northern rivers of New South Wales, near the border there, they have some rain-fed rice, a good little community up there that is growing it. And Steve Rogers up there was able to have a crack at some Agixa and got some good results from it. So it's really important that we have a product that suits rice that's grown in these different areas, because obviously it's a key point for Sunrise to expand the rice growing areas of Australia, and rain-fed rice in the northern rivers of New South Wales is a key area. So just a few key learnings from this demonstration was that Agixa can be a very good option that controls both grass and broadleaf weeds in one pass, where normally following a foundation treatment or pre-em treatment, you're looking at sometimes 2 or 3 treatments post-em applications to control weeds. So if you can just drop that back to 1, that obviously is saving a lot of time, energy and money, and is good for the environment and good for the rice too. There's some pretty special weeds up in the north that we down in the south you don't have to contend with. So as we do more work with compatibilities and programs, specific tank mix partners like Star Rain Advanced can help to go with Agixa to broaden the spectrum and really target some of those key weeds that are causing some grief in northern rivers. Also, really critical component of Agixa is the ability that it can be applied by both air and by ground. So when there is some issues with application, like in this instance, there was 200 mils of rain and nothing could get on. So you needed to be able to put it out by air, and that was where the flexibility came from that. That's just a good image of some sedges being controlled there in the north. One more, Cos. Just one more through, Cos.
Yeah, you're on the wood jelly trial now.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, so we also had a couple of really good demonstrations in 2017, 2018, one in wood jelly and then one down at Coleambly. And this was really just to reinforce the discussion and what our thinking is around Agixa being used in the sequence. And these trials really did show that. It also showed that a foundation treatment is so essential to managing that early weed competition. And that's, is carried through to yield when there's the rice isn't able to establish in a competitive way and the weeds get a hold. You obviously have more weeds to contend with, and the rice is held back from the beginning. And these demonstrations just really reinforced to us that you're going to have a really consistent and really good option with the Agixa following a foundation treatment to control your grass weeds, and that is reflected in the yield, which at the end of the day is what we need. Another key point that from these trials that we saw was that Agixa applied as the only herbicide option was really not a good way to go. It was inconsistent in the results. Sometimes it worked really well and yields were equivalent to a foundation treatment followed by Agixa, and other times the weed pressure was too much and it was trying to take down weeds that were too big, and it didn't work as well as it can. So again, that just reinforced the message to us that this product needs to be used in a foundation approach. If you go through Cos, there should be a big photo that just shows really clearly. So the 16-day and 30-day applications were at the wood jelly site, and this was down at the Coleambly site, so about a month after application. The really sort of browned out plots were the untreated controls, and they were sprayed out with barnstorm just to control the barnyard grass. So we're dealing with massive seed banks for the future. And you can see in that photo, in that drone pic, that there is some barnyard grass pressure in some of the barnstorm alone treatments, Agixa alone treatments, and then the pre-em alone treatments. But the pre-em or the foundation treatment followed by Agixa provided a really clean bay there, which is really exciting. Thanks, Cos. So another demonstration we had in the 2018-2019 season was in conjunction with Rice Extension in Coleambally there, and that was looking at delay permanent water systems versus just a standard drill sown rice system. So on this farm at Collie, there are only 4 bays of rice that year, and 2 were sort of managed as a standard drill sown rice system with knockdown foundation, and the barnstorm application was the post-emergence treatment, and water management was as per the grower had been managing for the last couple of years with his rice. This was compared to 2 bays that were set up as a delay permanent water system, just to see what information we gather, what sort of practicalities could be learnt from that, and what, whether it was going to be a really good option for not only Collie growers but others out there that wanted to go down the delayed permanent water route. So the sort of key learnings from this demonstration was that, as Greg showed in some of his earlier slides, sorry, Cos.
Yeah, that's all right.
As Greg showed in his earlier slides, was that if the timings don't work if there's a rain event, or there's not the time to get the gramoxone out, and then there needs to be dropped from the foundation program, that you can still get some excellent weed control if the timings of that Agixa is really exact. So that was really confident to know that is a very plausible option for not just delay permanent water systems, but just standard drill sown rice systems. It also gave us the confidence to know that the foundation followed by Agixa treatments can be used in delay permanent water systems, and that potentially there's options out there maybe to look at Agixa in a tank mix, or a different upfront foundation program that can give some residual control for the grass weeds in particular, that's going to fit better into a delayed permanent water system. So that's some more work for us to do, but looking at Agixa and potentially pendimethalin and what we can do to sort of fit that into delayed permanent water systems. That was a good trial there. Thanks, Cos. And this was a sort of large-scale demonstration at near Moormean in the 2018 season, and this is going to be a big option for people who've gone through it the last couple of years, and new growers or returning rice growers this year that are looking to transition from aerial seeded rice or dry broadcast rice systems into drill sown rice. So this was a first-time drill sown rice grower. So obviously big change with layouts, farm management, water management, and timings. And coming with that obviously is a change to the herbicide program. So that can be challenging, but with the support of agronomists and consultants, it can be done, and Rice Extension have done a lot of work and have a lot of information and data together that can help people make this move. But a big change obviously is that the weeds can be different. All the weeds are normally controlled by water, are not controlled. So in this case, we saw that Bathurst was controlled by this. So normally it's under flood and it dies away, but with drill sown rice, it's had a bit of water under it, it's ready to go, and it's growing away. So an application of Agixa was able to control this weed at that time. And also with changes to drill sown rice, that obviously a lot of changes with irrigation management. So having a product that can be easily, quickly applied and does a quick job on weeds is really critical for drill sown rice programs and the changes. So I really think that Agixa in a program with a foundation treatment can be a really good option for those that are transitioning to drill sown rice. That's it, Cos. Handing back to Greg, back to Dan. Thanks.
Thank you, Connie. I'll just hand over to Greg, who will run us through Ubeniq, please, Greg.
So that was a summary of a quick run through of Agyxor. Now we're just going to do a...
Greg, you've just got some static in your connection there.
Okay. Just bear with me.
Just progress to the next slide, please, Andrew, while Greg reconnects. I'll take this. So the Ubeniq, the product we launched 2 years ago, it's for permanent water rice fields. So it's application of a herbicide to the water. It only has broadleaf weed control on the label and dirty daughter suppression. Greg will go through some data later, but what we've seen with dirty daughter is if you can get it really small, Ubeniq will do a good job. If it gets some size, then it's a suppression job only. Ubeniq is only registered for use via squirt or Bickley boom as a direct application to floodwater. And again, Ubeniq must be used as part of a program approach with a strong foundation herbicide to get the best results. Again, it's from 3 leaf onwards. I think what you saw from Greg on Agixa going early in the 3 leaf, you can see some injury. As soon as you get 3 leaf, 4 leaf onwards, then application is very safe. And again, target small weeds. The smaller weeds you target, the better result you get. I think, Greg, are you back on now?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Sorry about that.
Okay, you can go.
Does that sound okay now?
Yeah, that's good, Greg.
Okay, so number 53, yep. So just a quick run through of the weeds that are listed on the label. Everyone can read the label. The thing about that I would highlight is that, firstly, that it's suppression of dirty dora. In the data that I submitted for the registration, it was not over 9 out of 10, but we wanted to be conservative with that and said that that would be suppression, as in 9 out of 10. All the other weeds are basically 10 out of 10. They are extremely sensitive to in flood application of Ubeniq herbicide. The second thing to say would be that we recommend for pre-mixing in oil, and that's to allow the Ubeniq to mix and disperse in the flood column, and preferably, if people can, try to do that 10 to 15 minutes prior to actually diluting with water and then applying, particularly when aircraft are involved. The other thing would be trying to manage flood depth, if possible, maybe in the old language, 2 to 3 inches or 5 to 7 centimetres of water is ideal to allow best spreading and mixing in the water column. And then, yeah, just for use by squirt is the other point. Next one, Cos. So the next one's a summary of the information that was submitted for the label. And as I said, dirty dora is listed as suppression, but over 9 trials, it was over 90% on average. And then all the others, the broadleaf aquatics, are basically 10 out of 10. And there's a bit of variability in the number of trials, so we didn't have so much jerry information at that stage, as Malcolm had just discovered it on the farm. But generally speaking, with arrowhead and starfruit and things like that, it's very, very strong. So near enough to 10 out of 10. As we move on, the next one's compatibilities, and so just trying to list some of the information that we have from trial work. Presently, the label has just the adjuvants that can be mixed, and it's the same group of adjuvants, uptake, hasten, or MSO, but the rates are different. The rates are higher to allow dispersion and mixing in the flood column than they were for Agixa, so make sure you check that. The other thing that we've found is that Ordream, Type N, and Satin are all physically compatible, and we're doing more work on that right now to try to determine how that can work in terms of either sequences or tank mixes that can broaden and complement the Ubeniq activity. So the next one is really on how to get the best from Ubeniq, and we'd say always, as we did for Agyxor, is always use it as part of a multiple mode of action program. Use it in sequence with a good foundation, a good sowing type treatment, and it will work really well. Target very small weeds, again, the same comment as for Agixa. It's only for application into floodwater, and pre-mix it with oil. And in terms of water management in this case, we say to try to lock the water up and keep it as still as possible for about 5 days to maximise the weed control. So the next section now is really just looking at how can we practically consider Ubeniq in our programs. And so far we've done 1 and 2. Malcolm has done demonstrations for the last 3 or 4 years which have shown the standard foundation or the standard at-sowing treatment for irrigated rice might be mollinate type N and then followed by Ubeniq. And it's very, very strong and broad. It controls all the rice weeds. The second one has also been demonstrated in years past, and I'll show you some data on that in a minute. Mollinate followed by Ubeniq is very, very good as well, and particularly where there's light dirty dora infestation. Preferably go for the first option if you have heavy dirty dora expectation. And the third thing that we're working on, and there's 2 parts to this, Leah suggested to us a couple of years ago, have we thought about dry soil satin, which was used many years ago. And so we've tried that, followed by Ubeniq, and it's worked very well in the last couple of years. And then the last thing that we're trying to is the old split satin type scenario where there's a primer rate of maybe between 1 and 1.5 litres per hectare, followed by a good rate of satin at the 2 to 3 leaf stage, or once the rice has got secondary roots, and adding Ubeniq to that, and that's worked really well too. The thing I would say is that we're doing more work this summer on those last 2, and by the end of the summer we'll hopefully have a better package of information that we can bring to you all in the industry to give you good confidence in those. So now just a few slides of actual trial data. This first one is rice safety in a demonstration, an industry demonstration that Malcolm did in 2017. And just to explain, this is percent injury on rice for a series of different sequences. And so treatment number 4, as we go from left to right, is the standard at-sowing treatment, Ordram plus type N, full rate of Ordram, full rate of type N at-sowing, and the injury that does. Number 5 is Magister, swapped for the Ordram together with type N at-sowing. 8 and 9 are Ordram followed by Ubeniq plus Hasten at the 3-leaf rice stage. Number 9 is the Magister instead of Ordram followed by Ubeniq, and shows no injury at all. Number 10 is the standard at-sowing Ordram type N followed by Ubeniq. And then we move over to some sequences which are post-emergence based around Agixa to give you confidence as well that you can use foundations then follow with Agixa if you choose to. So 17 is just post-emergence Agixa at the 4-leaf stage of rice. 18 is Ordram at the full rate followed by Agixa at 2 litres with Hasten and 4-leaf rice stage. 19 is Magister followed by Agixa, and 20 is a Ordram type N standard sowing treatment followed by Agixa. So the point out of all this is that the standard foundation of Ordram type N or even Magister type N, which people know really well, has given some rice impact initially, but about 10 to 15%, which is generally acceptable in the industry, and all the other treatment sequences that contain Ubeniq have given similar or less injury. There's a bit of variability in number 10, but generally speaking, the average injury is about the same. So that's really nice information from that industry demonstration, which Malcolm showed us all at the end of the 2017 season. The other point about these is note the comment too in regards to no foundation. I've put in whether there was a foundation or not in all of these slides. So then barnyard grass control firstly, and followed by dirty dora in a moment. The barnyard grass control was excellent with all but the Magister treatment. So treatment 5 and treatment 9 are the Magister sequences. And that's just showing that Magister hasn't worked quite as well as the Ordram based ones. The other thing too is that the treatments 17 to 20 have all given outstanding control of barnyard grass in that demonstration. Next, Andrew. So this is the same trial now looking at Dirty Dora, and it's a bit more variable, so I'll just explain. But the Ordram type N has given really nice control of about 9.5. Magister type N has also done pretty well in treatment 5, but then treatment 9 has not done so well. Treatment 8, which is Ordram followed by Ubeniq, has done very well. But treatment 10, Ordram type N followed by Ubeniq, is the best. It's 10 out of 10. Then we get to a little bit more variability, and this is why we're saying don't use Agixa for Dirty Dora. It's not on the label, is because it's difficult to get full coverage, and we're not applying a strong rate of the Rinskor active in treatment 17. So that's why it's about 6 out of 10, 60%. Ordram followed by Agixa is better. It's 8 out of 10, but still not enough on Dirty Dora. Number 19, Magister, is very poor because it lacks that initial activity on the Dirty Dora. But then the sequence of Ordram type N followed by Agixa is also complete control. So it's a very nice sequence. So there's some sequences there, either at sowing or with a sowing treatment followed by Agixa, that have given very nice Dirty Dora control. Next, Andrew. The other thing about that demonstration was the broadleaf aquatic weeds, and generally speaking, the control of arrowhead, starfruit and jerry was very, very strong, and it was complete when Ubeniq was applied at any of those timings of 3 leaf. So any of the 8, 9 and 10 treatments followed by Ubeniq gave total control of all those broadleaf aquatics because it's very, very strong. Next. So we're moving on to a different trial now, and this has also had no foundation treatment. This one's just highlighting some of the data that we've generated the last couple of years in relation to either Ordram or Satin sequences. So to explain these, this is the rice injury from a trial 2 years ago, which looks at Ordram type N in treatment 2, or Ordram at sowing, followed by Ubeniq in treatment 3. Then in the pink is Satin sequences, so Satin dry soil followed by Ubeniq in treatment 5. Then a different combination where Ordram was applied at full rate at sowing, followed by mixes of Satin with Ubeniq in the orange. And then number 8 is a comparison treatment of Ordram at sowing, followed by Satin at the 2.5 litre rate. So what this shows is that the sequences of Ordram followed by Ubeniq, or Satin dry soil, or Ordram followed by Satin plus Ubeniq, all gave acceptable rice injury at about 30 days or a month after treatment. So encouraging results in terms of rice safety. And then we look at weed control. And so first of all, barnyard grass, and all the sequences gave total barnyard grass control. So that's very nice. Next one, Andrew, and then Dirty Dora control. It's a little bit more variable. So treatment 3 is a little weaker because it doesn't have the type N that the treatment 2 does, but nevertheless still very nice control. And then total control for treatments 4 to 7, which are the Satin sequences or the Satin combinations. And then slightly poorer control with the comparison in number 8, Ordram followed by Satin at the 2.5 litre rate. So what that shows is that you can get really nice barnyard grass control and also pretty strong or very strong Dirty Dora control by using these sequences of either Ordram or there's three, let me start again. Ordram sequence, Satin dry soil, or Satin at about the 3 leaf stage after Ordram together with Ubeniq has given very nice grass and Dirty Dora control. So what that shows is, very quickly, is that there's potential for sequences of Ordram type N, or Satin dry soil, or Satin in mix with Ubeniq. So those 4 that I highlighted initially as sequences or combinations with Ubeniq that can give very nice weed control. So that's really it for me from Ubeniq. I'll hand back now to Dan to talk about positioning, availability and stewardship.
Thanks, Greg. So there's two tables on this slide, which are a comparison table or a positioning table, which we'll make available to you through our website, and we'll email this out to the people that have been on this call. Just comparing Agixa and Ubeniq. If you just click one more, Andrew, please. It just gives you an idea of where the products fit and what weeds they will control as per the label, and just some key best use guidelines. So we'll make that available afterwards. You can go to the next slide, please, Andrew. Ubeniq and Agixa will both be sold through the agency system, so we can successfully steward the products into the market. There will be an online training module available for nominated agents via our online learning portal. That's not available as yet, but it will be available hopefully as we hit the season in October. Next slide, please, Andrew. There's been a couple of questions about pack sizes and pricing. So Agixa comes in a 10-litre pack, similar size, well, same pack as Barnstorm used to. It's $160 a hectare for the 2-litre rate, ex GST. Ubeniq is available in a 1 and a 5-litre pack, and it's $60 a hectare for 150 mils per hectare. The next slide, please, Andrew.
Okay, thanks, Dan. So we've sort of finished just on the hour, so I appreciate everyone's patience to sit through the presentation, and hopefully that was of benefit for you. So there's a few questions that have come through, so if you do have any further questions, please type them in the Q&A function, and we'll endeavour to answer them. So I'll just start at the top. A few of these questions have already been answered. Question, and this is probably for Greg, is the efficacy of Agixa affected by temperature?
Oh, sorry, can't see it. So there's been a lot of trials done over the last 8 years, and I would say that Agixa is more is stronger and broader than Barnstorm has been. So people have most probably had experience with Barnstorm where it's been either drought stressed and or temperature stressed, and they've had poor results with Barnstorm. That's less likely to happen with Agixa, but it's not a total. It's not totally ensured that it won't happen if it gets really, really hot. So I would say use common sense and apply Agixa either early in the morning or late in the afternoon as the day is cooling off if you're going to have really hot days, and then apply flood water as soon as possible afterwards to avoid moisture stress. If I had to put a number on it, I would say that probably avoid spraying over 30 degrees Celsius because you've got other considerations to think about once it gets hotter than that, as humidity goes down as well. And try to apply, in the AM in the morning when weeds are fresh and got good moisture and growing actively to get best results. I hope that answers that question. The second one that I can see is about uptake and hasten rates. Andrew, is that the one that you were looking at?
You can go with that one, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, okay. So there's a question from James there about, is there any difference in the level of control between hasten uptake and rates? So 3 or 4 summers ago, we did work looking at rates of 1, 2 and 4 litres per hectare of crop oil, and we compared directly in very precise trials between uptake, hasten and MSO with Lesitech. And at the 1 litre rate, we saw slight differences where uptake and hasten were equal but slightly better than methylated seed oil with Lesitech. And so that's why we have a rate range on the label, which answers another question from Laurie on the line, to say that if you've got tough conditions or larger weeds or high densities or those sorts of things, then consider going to 2 litres per hectare, particularly if you're using MSO with Lesitech. In much of the trial work in subsequent years, we've used hasten as the adjuvant of choice because it's been only very slightly better than uptake and somewhat better than MSO. I'll just keep answering, Andrew, and then maybe Dan can go. So the
Sure
next
thing.
one's about the Agixa compatibilities that I can see. The information that we have is what was shared there this morning. That will be on the label as fast as we can. It's likely to be a 9-month turnaround and needs regulatory dossier writing, so it won't be out until next season. As I said in the talk, we would support the use of Starane and Stomp if necessary, and the oils at this point in time, because we've seen from trial data that they are readily compatible, biologically compatible. The other ones, I would say, be careful, because if you have adverse conditions, the ones that are listed as physically compatible may in practice result in reduced grass control. So I would be careful about those. Then the next one that I can see, Andrew, is has there been any plant back work done in North Queensland in regards to sugarcane? The answer is no, we have not done sugarcane plant back work, but we have done much work with other cereals, and it's really just the Cyhalophop portion that you were considering when your concern is sugarcane plant back time, and it degrades very quickly in soil, particularly in warm, moist soil that would occur in North Queensland around rice application timing. So we have not done work. However, I would expect that there would be very, very unlikely to be any issue in North Queensland in the warm, moist soils that Agixa might be applied in up there. I know there were some questions that were of a commercial kind of focus too, Andrew. I don't know whether they were answered or not by Dan.
They've been pretty much answered by Dan during his discussion. So there's another couple of questions about, both related, about the size of barnyard grass. And one question, what size barnyard grass will be controlled by Agixa? And the follow-up question to that was, Agixa registered up to the 5-leaf stage of barnyard grass, where Aura is up to 6 tiller. Where does Agixa fit in an aerial sown program, before or after the secondary lockup?
So let's go one at a time. So the first question was about, sorry, the first question was again?
What size barnyard grass will be controlled by Agixa?
So the label is written that way on purpose, and that's to try to encourage people to treat seedling weeds. But Agixa will work on weeds that are larger than what's on the label, but we really, really want people to try to apply the treatment on pre-tilled or early tilled weeds at the latest if possible. I showed you the data in the summary of how did we get to the rate that we chose, comparing Agixa and Aura, and Agixa is very similar to Aura in terms of its barnyard grass activity. They're both very strong barnyard grass treatments. However, we also have experience where there have been aerial applications of Agixa on noding barnyard grass, for example, and it's really just suppression. It won't work on weeds that are noding or starting to put seed heads out. So if possible, please consider putting it on to seedling weeds so that you get as close to complete control as possible. I hope that answers that question. The second one was, where does it fit in the programs, Andrew? Wasn't it something about the timings?
Yeah, so where does it fit in an aerial seeded program, before or after the secondary lockup?
Yeah, I would say, again, depending on your sowing treatment, and Andrew, you please comment too, you know more about it than I do, but I would say, depending on the at sowing or the foundation treatment that's used in the aerial sown rice, watch your bays and see how the weeds are progressing. If you've got good control, then you can delay it further and treat right up to PI as is on the label, and there'll be no impact on the rice in terms of either yield or crop safety. However, if the foundation treatment that you put out is not so robust on barnyard grass or other weeds, then you may need to consider bringing it forward some. So I think rather than the timing, I would say look at the weed stage and try to treat the appropriate weed stage to get the best outcome in terms of weed control and then yield. Andrew, you might want to comment on that. Have you got other thoughts?
Yeah, so I guess it's really going to depend on what primary program you're using, whether it's an Ordram Taipan or whether it may be a Saturn program where you've got a secondary lock up at that 2 leaf stage. So I guess the key component really is that we can't go any earlier than 3 leaf stage. So we need to fit the Agixa into the program around 3 leaf stage onwards. So it really just needs to be, and I'm sure most of you guys who are experienced in the field will work your way through this, but it'll be customised from program to program. But and ultimately, we need to time it into a stage where we can lower the water levels and expose at least 75% of the barnyard grass. So generally speaking, it's 3 leaf stage onwards, and how that fits into your programs. Hopefully that answers that one. There's another question there with in regard to plant backs, Greg, with rice receiving 4 to 5 megs of irrigation after application of Agixa and ponded for a period of at least 6 weeks, would this negate any plant back issues with legumes, and also was canola on the plant back list?
Yeah, so I would say it's very likely to. Both Rinskor active and Cyhalophob break down very quickly in flood water, and the label is conservative in regards to the week-long or the 7-day time frame for reuse or redistribution of water from treated fields with Agixa. So I would say it's very, very likely to. However, we haven't actually tested that. So I'd say, if possible, try to use the 3-month plant back time if people can. And the second part of the question, Andrew, was about canola, wasn't it?
Yeah, the plant back period on canola.
Yeah, so there won't be a plant back period on canola because both Rinskor and Rinskor active and Cyhalophob are safe to canola, or safe enough to canola. So there's no issue with going from rice straight back to canola.
Yep, that's good. There's just another question, and I think you might have answered part of it earlier on, Greg, but will there be a permit available for Starane Advanced to tank mix with Agixa?
Yeah, so that's a good question. We're working on that. I'm not sure if, I think Harriet's on the line. So we've been working with Sunrise to try to obtain a permit for use of Starane for folk that might be in places where it has value. So we've focused primarily on North Queensland for that, because Starane has excellent activity on some of the key weeds in North Queensland. When that will be available, I'm just not sure, because it depends on how quickly that travels through the APVMA approval process, but that's underway at this point in time. I received another update from Harriet just yesterday from Sunrise, and so that's in the system, so to speak, now, and hopefully will be approved in time for later this year in terms of this coming rice season.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Now that's answered all the questions that have come through the Q&A function. So very conscious of time, and that many of you need to get back out into the field. So we'll just start to wrap this up. I guess, hang on, there's just another Q&A that's come through. Agyxor and Starane tank mix worked extremely well in North Queensland, and Starane was able to control vines that Agyxor couldn't control. So thanks for that comment. Okay, so obviously planning for the season's well and truly underway, and nice to see an increase in allocations overnight in the MIA and Murray Valley regions. So I guess just up on the screen now is a list of the territory managers that service some of the rice growing regions. So Connie looks after the MIA, CIA, and the Eastern Murray Valley through to Delinquent. Ben Wykes covers the bottom end of the Western Murray Valley, Barron, Moama region. Nick Weckett services Swan Hill, and in the north we've got Kent Bell for the Northern Rivers and Kate Daly for North Queensland, and all supported with Chris Brown, who's our customer technology specialist. So certainly reach out to those guys if you've got any questions in the lead up to the coming season. We'll have some more information come out soon with tech manuals, and as Dan mentioned, there'll be a stewardship accreditation program we want to have agents run through. So there's certainly going to be a lot more come through. As previously mentioned, we'll send you a copy of this recording in a follow-up shortly. But really, I think we'll draw the webinar now to a close, and appreciate your attendance, and all the best for the coming rice season. Let's hope it's a great season for all considered. Thanks very much for your time.
Guys, talk soon.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.